Well, that's all she wrote, folks. Skirmish Season 7 is a wrap. Sideboarding did succeed in making a very, very flat meta, and although Kassai pulled down the most overall points, there was clearly no true leader. So, let's look at the final results. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Thanks for checking in, talking the end of Skirmish Season 7. The LL points were updated from me last night, or this morning, or yesterday, depending on where you are in the world. So I wanted to go through those as a final results and look at what we're looking at. And as we all know, there was a big announcement made. We'll be talking about that tomorrow regarding the Blitz format itself. All right, so just kind of a recap of what we had going into the season. So we had 536 Blitz skirmishes listed in Gem with a total of 536 points available now. I do want to point out that only 524, as of the update that's currently, as of the moment of me shooting this on LSS's Living Legend page, it only accounts for 524 points. So I'm assuming that either some didn't fire, or they were listed wrong, or maybe they just haven't been submitted in the system yet. But either way, we're working off 524 total points. Remember, at 1 point per win. So, all right, you can do the quick math and figure it out. All right, so I have updated the spreadsheet with everything. Now, we're going to look at the spreadsheet two ways. Again, remember, I'm keeping the order that everyone started the season in. That's what you see across the screen right now is the data of each week and then total with again, the order that they started in, and then I want to look at kind of the overall season here. We'll wrap around after we look at that. So week 3 data, which is what I'm very interested in. Remember, I was expecting to see Vincent pop up a little higher. We did see that to a certain extent, but certainly not necessarily statistically enough to say that, yeah, more people were on him. He was able to pull down 3 points in week 7 for 4% total of that. And do keep in mind, week 3 was the largest of the weeks with 194 logged points available. All right, but then looking at, now do keep in mind, we also had Battle Hard in Hong Kong. I am not counting, Chane took that down, not counting those points within Chane. I'm subtracting those, which means that Chane logged 27 wins. Last weekend was actually put him in second place, just behind Kassai. So he had 15.5% of the wins. Kassai pulled down her best week yet. She had been kind of leading the pack, and she pulled down her best week yet last week at just under 18%. Kano did a little better this week than he did last week, but pretty much on par-ish with where he's been at 11.3% of the wins. Rhinar at 6.3%, Bravo 8%. You can see Bravo is actually pretty consistent with that across the season, which is really interesting. And then of note, we did have, by the way, what I missed last week was Cav Dane actually pulled down a win last week, which is interesting. I did not note that last week's cast, so gives him 1 point for the season. But then if you look at really the rest of it, again, Rhinar, Bravo, and then you go and you look at Prism, or I should say the Prisms, so that's roughly consistent, right? Actually dropping a little bit, 5, 4, 3.5. Then if you go down, you look at Advent of Thrones, it was 3.5, 2.9, 2.3. So Prism was kind of downtrending over the course of the season. So very interesting stuff there. All right, now what I want to do is look at it from a different perspective. So what I've done now for the image that's across the screen is I've reordered them in terms of their current standings now after the season with how many points that they have today. Okay, so Kano's up to 391, but that's still a lot of wins to go in the future, and we're not going to have a significant number of Blitz events for a while, right? So be comfortable with your Storm Striders, I think for a while. Right, so the winner of Skirmish season overall. So what I have here is I have Dusk Till Dawn season, DTD season overall. So that counts the Battle Hardens, and then I went ahead and I broke out the Skirmish data, so we could just look at skirmishes, because again, there's a very different meta, and in many cases, there's a very different meta from what's happening in a Battle Harden, where you have maybe several hundred people, versus a local where you might only have people in the teens, something like that. So Kassai was first place for the season at 15.8%, followed very closely by Chane at just under 14%. So, I mean, basically in terms of overall global, those two really are pretty matched, which is pretty cool. We had Kano at just over 10% for the season in third place. And then we had Dash in fourth, and then Ira in fifth. So it will be interesting to see with the drone reban, to kind of jump ahead a little bit, but to that drone reban, we'll see what that ends up doing to Ira, because the vast majority of the Ira wins were in fact on, I mean, basically people copying the list that won the first battle hardened, and they were running it all through, because that's what people do. They copy lists, and that's, you know, that's fine. We did see overall that, you know, if you actually go down and look at Vincent, obviously started with 0, so had a significant percentage increase in his points, because that's how math works, right? But at 3% on the season, so pulled down 3% of them. I think Vincent's really, really, really strong. He's very, very explosive. But I think that there are certain cases in which probably she does suffer the Runeblade problem. Someone who I was impressed with their results this season, even though it wasn't necessarily high, was Bravo. I think Bravo did pretty well this season. I think you have to assume that some of that's due to just kind of the extra ammo, the extra tool he got in Starstruck. So that's pretty interesting to consider as well. Overall, kind of once you go into the field at large, you know, you look at Prism at 4% overall. And then if you go down and you look at the new Prism at 2.6%. So Prism's light illusionists, we should say, collectively at about 7-ish%. So you can kind of put the illusionists on par with Bravo, I think. And I do think it is reasonable to look at those together, because by and large, I think the player base would be split on that, at least the loyalist player base. Okay, so yeah, overall, I think, you know, it's just kind of, I'll put this away, but I think in vast, you know, kind of summary conclusions to Skirmish season, I think the sideboarding thing, you know, whether you can argue about how the meta shift and all that based on your personal preferences, but we were very much expecting it to be top heavy Kano. Again, I don't know what percentage it would have been. Remember, we were thinking that 30% is what he would have needed to LL. We were thinking it was possible. At least I was thinking it was possible. Obviously, it didn't happen, and the sideboarding certainly played a huge role in that. There's really no way to argue against that. You know, if you look at the two strong heroes, Chane and Kassai, they're a little harder to sideboard against. I mean, I guess if you're bringing in Oasis, that actually doesn't hurt against Chane, because that's really good against Rosetta. But either way, it's been very interesting to see how this leveled out. And I think the sideboarding was absolutely a successful part of that. All right. Last comment, I did want to talk the difference between kind of the larger tournaments, the Battle Hardens, or the Battle Hardens at the Callings, or whatever it may be, versus the locals. The fact that we saw Runeblades do well at 2 of those Battle Hardens, I think, is not going to be lost on folks, maybe at your locals going forward over the next at least couple months, maybe until the next set drops, maybe even beyond that, since it's just a mech set. So that's very interesting to note and kind of keep in mind for yourself as well. So anyway, folks, that's just the recap, putting this one to bed. I do really want to ask you if you liked this series, let me know below. I did it last time as well. It got pretty good feedback. So again, remember to do the likes, leave a comment. Really helps me know what my time is used, but if there's like other videos and stuff like that. So anyway, folks, thanks for checking in. If nothing else, have a great rest of your week, and go Commando.